a number crunching, cost calculating economist was not going to be my career path. I define PR as the science of image management. The communications company, fully desi, totally Atmanirbhar, perfect relations, the acronym will become PR and I would own the industry. There's almost no industry, whether it's a duster or a drone, that I have not dealt with. The old definition of PR suited the world that ended in 2022 with COVID. Dhirubhai Ambani wanted me to start a newspaper. It was instantly changed into a weapon of war when he was attacked by the Wadias. I do bad things very well to get my clients the good things that they want. Lobbying for a long time had connotations of large suitcases being exchanged in cars in the middle of the night. If she decides to wear a floral on a day when there's a funeral, she's got to pay the price for it. You know, most people don't understand the difference between patriotism and nationalism. The bureaucrat is only a very smart exam writer. Delhi, to my mind, truly functions out of Khan markets. Delhi needs a Sardar.
Welcome, Dilip. Can I call you that?
Yes.
Thank you. You know, the podcast is about Delhi and people from Delhi and stories from Delhi. And so before we go further into your journey, I wanted to ask what brought you to Delhi in the first place? What started your Delhi journey?
You know, it was the recognition that a city as gigantic in those days as Calcutta, where I grew up, where I went to school and college, had gotten suddenly shrunken for me. And I recognized it one day when I got into a bus, a double-decker Calcutta transport bus to go to college. And the conductor looked at me and said, and buses in Calcutta were legendary in terms of how confusing and how packed they would be. The conductor says, "Why haven't you been to college for 2 days?" And I said, "Now the city is too small for me. It's time to get out." Where do I go? I was studying economics, and the Delhi School of Economics seemed to be the big place where economics moved to the next level. I had already got admission into the master's degree in Calcutta University also. And I said, why not do this? The backstory to that was that when I was choosing colleges, I had possibly thought of coming to Delhi, but I recognized that circumstances were not such that I could move cities at that time. So I applied to the Delhi School of Economics, and my father gave me permission, and my mother agreed, simply because I had an elder cousin who was already doing his PhD at the Delhi School. So that it was the pursuit of education, the need to get out of a city which one knew like the back of one's hand, and to explore a new city, which made me choose Delhi.
So you're born and brought up in Calcutta?
I was born in Kerala, but before too much damage could happen, I was brought to Calcutta. And I can't say that damage didn't happen, but I really did grow up in Calcutta. So.
And what did Delhi look like to a young economic advisor in the early days?
No, I came to study. I came to study at the Delhi School of Economics. It looked like a gigantic village. It was also very confusing till you got the system. Delhi wasn't crowded. It was not packed with cars. It didn't have a difficulty of navigation, etc. Once you figure it out. What did I figure out? I figured out very long time ago, and it has stayed with me since then, that there were two circles which mattered. One was the circle called Connaught Place, and the other was the circle called the Ring Road. And I then realized that because people were going around in circles, you had to break out of the circle if you wanted to make anything of yourself. So I was studying in the Delhi School of Economics, which was in the north of Delhi, in the extreme north of Delhi. And because I was endlessly restless, I decided that while I was studying this very epic and really difficult masters, I should also try and do computer programming. And where did I find an appropriate course? Nowhere but in, I think it was IIT Delhi, which is right across the city from Delhi University. The Those who know Delhi know there's this Mudrika bus which goes around, and you have to know whether you're going in the positive direction or the negative direction. And I would be on this bus in the evening after class was over to get to this night school which was teaching at IIT. And so I'd get on the bus and I'd probably just get to the IIT gate, and I'd get off and then walk again and get to class and then get back onto the bus, and I'd go to sleep. And the bus would take me past my hostel, and I would suddenly find myself somewhere else. The advantage of Delhi in those days, and the Delhi of today also, is that students had this unlimited rides on
the student pass.
on all buses, student passes. And while I didn't need that to go to college because it was walking distance from the hostel, the only use for the college bus pass was to go to IIT. And it was endless rides. And the other problem was that if you didn't get back into hostel at 11, then the late dinner would also close up. Then you had to eat in a dhaba, which you could not afford. So all nights were panic because you would have to try and stay awake at the interstate bus terminus because your hostel stop was about 4-5 stops from there. So it was wonderful schematic chaos, and I loved it. I don't think I learned very much in terms of programming, but I understood the city completely because one night you were going past the university and you'd have gone all the way to Sabzi Mandi, and then you get back on the bus and then go the reverse direction. So you knew every direction of Delhi by then.
But you completed the course. And then you joined after.
Then I joined the government as an economic advisor. And that itself was as in all of my life, a story of both synchronicity and serendipity. One of the top professors in the Delhi School of Economics at that time was a lady called Professor Dharma Kumar, who was actually a cousin of the renowned author Ramachandran Goa. And Ram Goa was a classmate of mine, and she thought I was a gloriously bright student and said that her husband was the chairman of the Bureau of Industrial Costs and Prices, which was a very important government organization at that time. Don't forget, this was the days of the last death throes of socialism, and government decided the price of sugar, jute, tires, paper, etc.
What year are we talking about?
We are now talking in the last legs of the 70s, so 78, 9 or so. And I'm not very good at dates, but a classmate of mine and I were selected by Dharma to meet her husband, and he was the chairman, and he met us in their home drawing room because she said, look, exams finish on Thursday and you should start on Monday because otherwise I won't see you guys again and you'll just vanish into doing something foolish. So the second part she was right, and the first part she was wrong. We never vanished from our life. But while her husband interviewed us, she made comments from the side, and the interview was probably the biggest non-interview I've ever been in. And he said, you can start on Monday. I think partially fearful of his wife, who was ready to bludgeon him from the corner of the drawing room where they were. And he had this huge house, one of those lieutenants' bungalows where secretary level people of the government stayed in. And so I started my job. So that's how it started.
And then what made you leave this, this traditional path in policy and move towards public communication?
One was I recognized that calculating numbers, which I didn't calculate, by the way, though I had to pronounce that this should be the price of jute or tires, which are the two subjects that I was supposed to look at. And I had no clue how the calculation was done because I had not paid attention in college. Dharma Kumar thought I did. Lavraj Kumar knew after he saw the first set of calculations that I didn't, but he tolerated me and he enjoyed all the other stuff that I would do around in the office. So I figured out that being a number crunching, cost calculating economist was not going to be my career path. Also, I had already written the IAS exam, the SBI exam, the Reserve Bank exam, every possible exam, and I had gotten through. So I knew that structured career paths were all going to be like this. You'd sit in a large office and you'd be looking at papers, getting data, going and collecting data in some cases. And I said, this is not really what I want to do, a career in administration. So again, synchronicity played its role, and the chief consultant who was looking after this costing project of certain commodities was a very renowned man called Ramchandran, again, strangely. And he was asked by the publisher of a fledgling magazine at that time called Business India, whether he could suggest somebody who could cover issues to do with the bureaucracy and Delhi for the magazine, which was based in Bombay. It's a fortnightly magazine. So Ram said, why don't you meet the publisher? Because I think you'll do very well because you write very well. So he was referring to the fact that I would write the poetry of the text of what he had to submit, and the prose, which is the maths, I would goof up on, so he would correct that. So I joined this magazine, Business India, and started reporting on the capital and on business and how policy would interact with that. So having the background of 2.5 years of BICP, and it was close to 3 years when 3 years was my fixation, that if I stick here for more than 3, then you get regularized and you don't become a consultant and all that. I was scared of that, and I said that will get me trapped. So I moved to Business India. And Business India was a new magazine, nobody knew of it. I had to introduce the magazine to the city, and I had to report on bureaucracy. And actually, that is when I started a column called Dilli Ka Babu, which was called something else at that time, which I have continued. So it has started in the 90s.
Oh, I wanted to talk about that, but I didn't know you started in the 90s.
Continues till today, because the magazine had readers who were primarily interested in business, and I had access, because of being a business reporter, to a certain kind of decision policy wonks of Delhi. And these were the days before even think tanks had been invented. So policy was all dictated by those who were sitting in either the bhavans or the sadhans in those days. So whichever sadhan or bhavan I wanted to go to, because I had a press pass and that was easy in those days, I could access, and I got to know endless numbers of bureaucrats, endless numbers of committees, endless numbers of people in the trade of policy making. And that's what made me do that. And that was really my calling card in the magazine, though I did hardcore cover stories for the magazine.
And how many years was this?
I must have spent close to about 10 years with the magazine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, almost close to 10 years. I realized again, like in the case of both BICP as well as writing exams, that when you're very good at doing a thing is the time when you quit doing that thing.
When you're very good at doing a thing.
Very good at doing a thing is the best time to quit doing that thing. So I noticed that in a fortnightly magazine, I had done 4 cover stories in 6 months or 8 months. I said, I'm doing this in my sleep now. I'm not going to get any better at this because this is as many cover stories you should do, given that it is a fortnightly. So I said, now it's time to quit. I said, now what do I look at? What should be the next thing? And without having any anxious moments of whether I should quit now or not, a new offer turned up at my door, and Dhirubhai Ambani wanted me to start a newspaper. So
in Delhi,
in Bombay. And I was in Bombay, the editor was not well, all kinds of things were happening. And so I spent time between Delhi and Bombay, then I spent a lot of time in Bombay, and I had got to know the Ambani family. It was Dhirubhai really, more than anything else. And he said, I want to start this newspaper, tum aa jao. And I said, look, I can't. One, I don't know what a newspaper runs like. He says, wo to tum South Indian ho, tum seekh loge. And so I said, हाँ ठीक है, but then I have to, and I'd spent 10 great years with Ashok Advani, the publisher, and I said, I'm not going to quit without having him agree. So he said, मैं तो उसको phone कर लूँगा. तो Dhirubhai called up Ashok and said that, look, ये लड़का आना चाहता है, पर आपका permission के बिना नहीं आ रहा. So that's how I joined, and then we spent 2 years, and this is the brilliance of the man. We spent 2 full years just doing dummies and getting the newspaper structure put together. Because Dhirubhai in those days had a vision which I don't think anyone has really enunciated. His vision was that he would get machine translation of a business newspaper and publish it in 10 languages. And the translation would be done by computer. He says, computer ye kar sakta hai. And this is before AI or before even machine learning or even before machine translation was invented. He had a vision that this newspaper, which he had called the business of politics, the Observer of Business and Politics, because we bought a newspaper called the Observer before to start this, to acquire a title. And he said, look, why can't we publish it in Bengali, in Gujarati, in Marathi, in Assamese? And I said, is this even feasible? Because in those days, but he knew that I understood computers a bit, and he had very bright guys. And Dhirubhai's vision was that the newspaper should be a gigantic operation. And
like anything else he would consider.
Absolutely. His vision was huge. And I had to recruit probably about 300-400 journalists across the country. I was traveling everywhere, interviewing them, and you had to interview like 5 or 6 people to get one person. And it was a brilliant and complex concept he had. But his objective was very, very clear. It was instantly changed into a weapon of war when he was attacked by the Wadiyas. And he realized that, VP Singh was going after him. He realized that he needed to defend himself. And he said, this is my weapon of war. And it worked for him that way because the way he saw it, he had invested 2 years and more in building this up. And he needed the brilliance of a product like this to counter a huge enemy who could have destroyed him and would have destroyed the Ambani fortune, which at that time had just been created.
So then from you ran that newspaper, Observer ran for a few years.
Yes, absolutely.
And then
I ran the newspaper for about a year. And then I had an issue about credibility and the use of the newspaper. So I decided rather than get into a pitched battle being inside, better to move out. That is the first time I actually moved without a real offer of a job.
Okay.
But I quit because I said, this is not sustainable for me. And along comes somebody who wants to start a newspaper, which was designed in those days. It was a newspaper, a magazine stroke newspaper, which was designed for just members of parliament and MLAs in all states.
Okay.
So we worked on this concept, and interestingly, we worked in the house of an MP who had sublet his drawing room for the office. And we created the magazine, but I realized it wasn't going to go much further. And at that time, there was a large... In the meantime, while I was with the Observer, I'd already run one experiment, which is a bit like what in the place where we are in, I had this dream of wanting to start a restaurant. So I had done that.
Okay.
That had gone on in Hoskas village. All that had happened. Then I'd shut that down even while I was at the Observer. Then this new magazine option came up. I worked with that for a while. And then I was also consulting with a PR company, which is called Good Relations, which is a overseas owned company run out of the Taj because Ajit Kerkar was a partner in that. And then I said, now it's time, after having consulted with them, done this newspaper, done the magazine, I said it's now time to set up something like a communications company, fully Desi, totally Atmanirbhar. And I said, if I've already worked with Good Relations, then the obvious name should be Perfect Relations. It should be better than Good. So, of course, the Good Relations itself was owned by a gentleman called Tony Good, which is why that name. But I said Perfect Relations, the acronym will become PR, and I would own the industry. So that was the idea with which Perfect Relations was started, close to.
So before I go into that, and I'm very, very curious, just for the record, how do you define what public relations is, or PR as we call it? How would you define it?
We live in a VUCA world, a world where there is variability, uncertainty, certain levels of chaos and ambiguity. That's the world we live in. Okay? That's the world as it used to be. PR was a means of helping large companies and CEOs navigate that world. And communications was a very crucial part of that because they had to say what are they trying to do. They had stakeholders, which is employees, shareholders, distributors, dealers, government, and they had to communicate to them. And that was to my mind, having been a business reporter for 10 years, I knew that this is where Indian companies were weakest. And the kind of advice they were getting from a global PR firm, which was here at that time, was pretty pedestrian. It was not suited for the Indian market. It was copy-paste, cookie-cutter stuff coming from abroad. They were just advertising agencies whose divisions were trying to do this, and the usual solution was advertise some more, which is not what was needed. So I said, let's set up a PR company, which is Indian, which deals directly with the chairman or the founder of the company, i.e. the boardroom. So I define PR as the science of image management, of creating images and then managing them. The world has changed since the time I created Perfect Relations. We live in a world which is now, the VUCA has been replaced by violence, by much higher levels of uncertainty. The crisis is fundamental to every corporate existence, and ambiguity has been replaced by aggression. So you are now living in a new VUCA world where all the letters in a sense have changed, and the conventional PR, which I ran for 30 years, I decided I'd had enough of that because I realized that the coordinates, the x-axis, the y-axis, the z-axis had all changed. So companies were still getting patient, pathetic advice. And I said, now it's time to get out of Perfect Relations and set up DC Inc., as I call it now. Because at the end of the day, who am I serving? I'm serving a CEO or a large corporation run by a founder, or a large political party, or a large NGO, all of which the heads of them are used to a world where things were, there was change, there was variability, there was uncertainty. But today it's not that. Today there is the ambiguity has been replaced by virtuality. Virtual attacks are happening on you. Virtual worlds are being created by you. And I think that the way I see it, the old definition of PR suited the world that ended in 2022, okay, with COVID. Now we're living in a new world, a world dominated by the Trumps, the situation with our own border, with the situation with an extraordinarily achievement-driven China, with a whole bunch of things which are going to change even as we speak.
And this is the first time I've heard anybody actually put it and say that 2022 actually the world as we knew it did end, and I think we've all been very much in denial about this. So so in those days, when did you first realize that okay, PR is not the fluff that we imagine it to be, and it can actually not just build corporate reputation but also influence policy and build national narratives? At that time, did you see this vision, or were you only looking at the corporate?
I looked at it from the corporate point of view, and I looked into government from the outside, but I was privileged because I had been in the government looking outwards at the companies who are making jute, tires, paper, pencils, whatever. So I realized how government looks at them. And I realized how companies look at government. I also realized that to a large extent, government very often had the upper hand in policy. I don't think that's necessarily true at all times. There are many corporates who actually run segments, sections, elements of government. Politicians sometimes used to think that they dominated without knowing that they were dominated by bosses who were run by corporates. So I think that understanding this shift happened because of exposure to Dhirubhai, exposure to Lavraj Kumar and BICP, exposure to Ashok Advani, who was pure corporate. And then the new thing that hit me much later on was that while all of this was happening, companies needed guidance. And what is the big thing that happened in the 2000s and thereafter, well before the 2022, which I talked about, but well before that, was the huge interference that the courts started to play, especially after the end of the MRTP and the controller of capital issues. The courts began to play a role because new sets of regulators came into play and new rules and laws were in place for an emerging India in the post-Manmohan regime. So with liberalization, with the start of that, the economic environment changed. The environment in which government was taking decisions changed. Think tanks came into play. Companies now began to recognize that being able to influence policy was not just about going and meeting your joint secretary, but also very often about understanding who the minister was, what the question in parliament was, which think tank was giving which report, which embassy was pushing for a certain project from their country versus you as the Indian corporation whose space was going to be taken. So a whole bunch of new, it was like suddenly the globe had lights inside and was spinning more rapidly, and a lot became visible, and I'm not even going into the challenge of social media and the exposure that it created.
Yeah, that was a little later also.
The law thing struck me, and which is why today I'm very happy that I've, in a sense, like having created the science of image management, I've now been, post the perfect relations chapter, I've created a thing called litigation landscaping, which is allowing companies to understand how to navigate the landscape around litigation. Because if you look at what happened most recently, just a few days ago, um, what was structured in a certain way in terms of getting banks to be able to get part of their money back from being able to restructure a corporation. Now there are questions being raised even on that. So we're living in a world where all the wheels
Are
are
constantly
moving,
moving.
and not necessarily in the same direction that they were moving earlier. So IBC had its own traction, it was moving this way. Suddenly the court comes in and you can hear the gears grinding to a halt and everything being recalculated.
Yeah, but I think that's something you've dealt with almost in the beginning of your career in public relations.
Actually, I began to navigate that when I realized that the cheapest way to ride a tram in Calcutta was to hang on to the outside. That is, looking from the outside in and seeing the conductor come towards the door, and then you jump off the tram and run along the tram and then go to the other side. So, moving objects, flexibility, and constant awareness of your environment are, I think, in a sense, drilled into my DNA from growing up in a city like Calcutta.
Yeah, because I've never seen you flustered or stressed or considering how much is always on your plate.
I try not to, but Delhi taught me that everything moves in circles. Things will come back to you. Exercise great patience, even as you exercise caution. Understand that if you are at the center of things, things will begin to revolve around you, and you don't need to worry. And it is the ability to make that revolving at a pace which is just enough to create discomfort to make it exciting to hang on. That's, I think, that's the game.
That's the game, to be the center of your universe.
Of your universe.
So tell me, how did you sell perfect relations to your first client? What did you tell them? Who was your first client?
My first client was strangely a senior of mine from school in Calcutta. So he was the CEO of Pepsi, and he turned around to me one day. We were chatting about school. He didn't know I was from Don Bosco. He was from Don Bosco, etc., etc. And he said, I'm using this American PR agency, and they're irritating me like hell. So I said, what happened? He said, I get a different bill every month because they charge by the hour, depending on how many hours they've spent with me. And it's ridiculous because I've got to run that bill past my headquarters each time. He said, if I were to get a fixed bill, I'd be so much happier. And they refuse because they work on an American system of per hour billing and, depending on. So I said, why don't you do something? Why don't I think of a model? He says, Dilip, the day you are willing to start an agency, I know you, I'll ship the account to you. I said, are you serious? Because, it was one of the big companies in India, and it was employing a gigantic American corporation. And the penny dropped that if an Indian company can give a fixed bill, take the risk that in some months you will do more work, in some months you will do less work, and then you don't negotiate, you just get the same retainer every month. It was changing the very model on which the industry worked. It's like a lawyer saying, I will charge you a fixed fee for this litigation, irrespective of how many appearances I have to make in court. So he said, Dilip, are you sure you can do this? I said, yeah. And I said, done. We'll create this agency. And I created the agency the next morning.
Okay. That was...
So it was like that. I switched out of good. I poached the CEO who became a partner and set up this new company. And I said, hey, now we're ready to go.
And Pepsi became your first client.
First client. And, there was no looking back after that because once you have a large client like that, and I was still working out of that MP's drawing room in Gurudwara Rakabganj Road, strangely. And I had a motorcycle and my partner he had a car. And so I would write out the press release and he would go in the car and distribute it in ITO, which where all the newspaper offices were. And if I needed to make a phone call, I couldn't use his phone sometimes, most times. So I'd get onto my bike and go up to a pay phone, drop coins in and make my calls. And it worked wonderfully for the first month and a half. Then we realized, this is not a game we're playing. Pepsi is a gigantic client and we better get our act together. So we hired an office and the story began.
Okay. And you introduced the concept of, and you were mentioning image management in India. So where did you, and that's where you made your mark and you're called India's image guru. Where are you leaning into international trends? There was no concept of image management in India. I mean, if whether you look at politicians or you look at heads of big corporations, bureaucrats, so not at all. So where did this idea come that whether it's businessmen or politicians much later, I think that the image has to be managed.
It's somewhere between the concept of Maya and the concept of what the Bible says, in the beginning was the Word and the Word was God. Okay, so it's all images, and images are best conveyed with writing, best conveyed, in fact it's better conveyed through writing than any other medium even today. You may have a great visual, but if you don't have the right words to describe it and to imprint that in your customer's head, your client's head, your judge's head, your shareholder's head, your private equity guy's head, it is that word which has that impact. So I called it image management, but it was actually a skill which involved words. And like my litigation landscaping, I realized that you needed to understand the chaos of the environment first, and then superimpose on that an image or a landscape. And that's always been my understanding of how the world functions.
And who was the first client who you image managed for?
Image management in the ideal world is done for predictable behavior people like companies. And then you create an image which they conform to.
Okay.
When I did the first politician, which was many years later, and it was a regional politician, I remember that the biggest disadvantage he had was that he didn't realize the need to be consistent. He was constantly reactive and didn't have a focus on 5 words that he wanted to define himself by. When I made that change for him, it worked. It so happened that the politician at that time was also a minister in the government. A businessman took me to him and said, Dilip Bhai will tell you how you should structure your image because you're all over the place. The businessman was clearly a patron of his. The minister was clearly much, much bigger than him. And yet, this businessman was able to convince him that what Dilip is doing with companies needs to be done with you.
And he listened.
And the joy was that because the language, the patwa, was so alien to the politician, he says, isme to kuch hai. And being a very, very, very wealthy politician, he understood why a businessman would be able to tell him what was to be done.
True.
They were friends, but there was a patron relationship both ways. And yet, he saw that a not so stupid guy is telling him to do a very, very different thing. And I, in a sense, successfully married those opportunities into a new product, which was to deal with politicians and political parties.
And Perfect Relations also was the first Indian firm to give legitimacy to advocacy. But in today's cynical words, how do you defend advocacy versus the perception of lobbying? And lobbying is considered, is both a dirty word and an everyday occurrence in Delhi. So how do we differentiate between advocacy and lobbying when the company does it?
It's a tough question. What I usually do is, the worst word to describe this in global parlance is when people ask me, what do you do? I tell them I'm a spin doctor. So they say, but that's a bad word. I said, I don't do very good things.
Yeah.
I do bad things very well to get my clients the good things that they want. That's it. So once you get over that hurdle,
For yourself first.
everything is open.
Yeah.
Everything is open. You have communicated that you're not the good guy here. You're just the guy who helps you win. If you want to win, having good guys on your side is not enough. So that's why you need me. Lobbying versus...
That's a sell very difficult to refuse, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea is that if you are able to do that sell, and as you said, it's not a difficult sell, but if you're able to do that sell, then you don't need to give legitimacy to the activity you do. You have a very clear objective. The objective is, I want to change this policy because it is damaging me. You, so-called representative of what is right, either don't know what is right or are doing what you're doing because somebody else is influencing you to do that. Could be a think tank, it could be a competitor, it could be another country. It could be your own stupidity, which is the toughest thing to change. So advocacy is the gentle form of it.
I was going to say the polite way of doing it.
Now, lobbying for a long time had connotations of large suitcases being exchanged in cars in the middle of the night.
Correct.
I decided there was a space somewhere in between which did not involve the suitcases but which did not involve gentility. So what do? Hostility and aggression with ideas. So what I'm doing today is what I'm doing, which I created yesterday and enhancing, is that just as the rules of the game are in a sense defined, but how you play on that surface is defined only by you. So if you take the metaphor of either golf or tennis, you are wielding the same bat as your opponent, but it is the move of the hand which spins the ball on the court, either this way or that, or it's the swing of your golf club which will send the ball on the trajectory that you want to get close enough to the hole that matters. That's all I do. I keep telling people, I'm not going to win the scoring point, that you will do, but I will get you close to the goal, and that's my job.
And I mean, you just use the word, that I'm a spin doctor, but and that's what I think most people think PR is. It's about hiding. It's about spinning a story or delaying. What does real image management actually look like when you're doing it? Give me, explain it to me through an example if you're comfortable sharing any of the ones that you've dealt with.
It's absolutely comfortable, and I'll tell you. So I'll give you the example of a very large company I worked with, which was creating a form of digital payment. Okay? So they thought it was about technology, about IT. I told them first, it's about trust. Somebody is giving you money and wants you to store it and then allow them to use it. So the fundamental process was one, research. You start with research, understanding how does your customer, your consumer, look at what your product is or your services. So I spend a lot of time researching this. The advantage I have personally is that I have either experienced, researched, or been involved or advised a whole bunch of industries. So if somebody from a completely new industry comes to me, I already am blessed with the fact that I have a kind of a library of thought on issues to do with aspects of everything that they do. Okay. So in the case of this company, I understood after research, but also because I had worked with the bank before, I had worked with the private equity company before, I had worked with many elements, and I had worked with many consumer brands and also with some retail giants. So you understood that his product was about someone putting money into his account, him allowing a technical means of transferring that money in the sizes that the client wanted to service providers, to sales outlets, etc. But the research showed that the real problem was not trust as to whether he would hold my money safely, but trust whether he would help me complete my transaction smoothly.
Okay.
So that was where the trust gap was. So we suddenly had to pivot. He was interested in saying everybody must trust me, they must give me their money. But I said no. The people are quite willing because they're used to banks, they're used to a whole bunch of intermediaries, but you are an intermediary who's keeping the money in a bank, but they don't trust whether you will be able to complete that transaction smoothly to the last degree. So that was where the communication message began to evolve. Then we had to explain to people, why will this guy, why will his technology and why will his backup together work seamlessly to provide you what you want? Then we had to project, of course, he's the biggest because he's going to be the biggest, he's going to have the most access, the most transaction, the most number of point of sale access, etc. So the spinning was really about distinguishing him from a bank, distinguishing him from a credit card, because suddenly the credit card became disaggregated. So you had to understand how to do this. And research followed by advice to the company, followed by training the CEO on how to deliver this message. Then the spin doctoring, working with media to make sure that they were able to see this distinction and would go and ask him precisely the questions which would allow him to elucidate and explain this. And then you build the story block by block. Then there's, by that time there was stuff like digital media, social media, videos, all of that. All that comes in as part of the creative process. But today, having had the experience of working with over 3,000 clients, there's almost no industry, whether it's a duster or a drone, that I have not dealt with. Okay? But what I still am very often surprised by is the mental agility and willingness of a CEO or a founder to have the patience to go through what is it that when you communicate will give you the push up that you want.
But I guess when they're coming to somebody like you, that will have to be a given, because one is still used to that a PR agency is only sending out a press release, and many PR agencies still work on that format that you've taken us and so this the strategic communication and the planning. So you've worked with India's biggest and brands and people. Any situationship that really tested your nerves?
Lots. The trick is to allow your nerves to be jangled, but not be nervous. And very often, clients have told me after a very violent spell of action that the moment Dilip walks into the room, the temperature drops. There's a chill because I'll focus on getting the coffee right, whether the French press is perfect or not, that kind of stuff. Because I know I'm cracking the problem while I'm listening to them. But they're all frenzied. And I think that the toughest assignments in terms of crisis, and the first crisis I dealt with was when ONGC had a fire at Bombay High. And the chairman had never used PR before. And the chairman said, why do I need to use this? The petroleum secretary told him, you will use Dilip because this is...
Oh, this is after the fire has literally started.
After the fire has literally started. Okay? In that case, it was relatively easier as a crisis. And because the fire had started, I didn't start the fire, I promise. And I had to just make sure that the messaging was right. And it took a long time, which is about 3 hours, to figure out what is the message we want to send out.
Which was?
The message we chose to send out was that a company that can drill deep into the sea can minimize the damage to our energy security. That's all. So I didn't want to send a message that we have multiple choices, we have imports, we have Assam, we have Godavari, we have this, we have that. And we didn't want to send that. We just want to send a message that this is a company which has the technical skill to manage India's energy scenario. Because ONGC was the giant. It was the Navratna. Okay? So we had to make sure that the company came through at a bigger and higher level at the end of this crisis. If you take a totally different crisis example, many years after we'd done Pepsi, Coke ran into a problem where there was this expose that the water was contaminated and Coke had to be taken off the shelves, etc. Coke was using a global agency. They had no clue what to do. Someone called me, said, Dilip, they need to talk to you. So I said, who's the agency? They said this. I have a rule that I don't work if there's another agency in place because I don't want to take bread out of somebody else's mouth kind of philosophy. So they said, they're not able to do this. Can you come? So I said, all right, we'll chat. And in my case, come usually means somewhere in central Delhi, I'll have a meeting with you. Coke's office was in Gurgaon. I said, no, we have to do it here because my time is really short and I'm doing 100 things, which I was doing before. But we again realized that the problem with Coke was that Coke USA, Coke India were all trying to show that their water was safe. That is not the problem. The problem was that the consumer felt that they were being cheated. The consumer felt that there was something wrong. How could the test show this? So we said, look, it's actually about safety, that you are willing to put in whatever is needed to make sure that the product that you're producing now, don't go into justifying that we already had the, show that the product you're producing now is safe. That mothers don't mind their children drinking it, that fathers can safely order it in their offices. That has to be the message and that has to work. So go into the future. Don't go trying to justify the past. They say, what about the case? I said, we'll deal with that later on. But first, let's get this right. And it worked. We stepped in, we were, and then suddenly we were considered the crisis counselors of choice, which I must confess has been something which has stayed with me. And besides being an image guru, and a litigation landscaper, the third kind of thing I do is really crisis communications.
When you're advising big shots and big politicians and powerful people, how do you handle a client when he insists on being his own worst enemy now in the time of social media and wants to do and tweet anything or do anything? How do you handle that? Or when they won't listen to you?
So the big question you're asking is, would I be able to manage Trump? The answer is, with all due humility, I doubt it.
I could have given many examples from India also.
Yeah. So I'm deliberately staying outside.
Yeah, let's stay in the safe zone.
The subcontinent.
Yeah, we'll stay in the safe zone.
In the safe zone,
yeah.
I can give you 2 examples in the local zone, but I will not. I would say that sometimes the best thing to do is to do what a mother often does: let the child fall. Let him come crying to you. Let it happen once or twice. Then they learn that what you're saying makes sense.
Ouch.
So it may hurt. It usually also is a very sensible tactic to collect your fees in advance. Because when they fall, they might refuse to pay the next month. So I would say that It isn't the best technique, but sometimes you are right that there are the odd examples of people who are paying you good money, but who don't take your advice in the sense that it needs to be taken. So very often you have to fight. Most often you have to provide examples or evidence of why it won't work. And I think that usually people who are smart enough understand what the you know the world is not entirely susceptible to change in the way they want it. They have to recognize that there are some immovable objects like a rock or a mountain.
What do you think is the biggest misconception about PR today?
That it's a magic wand, that it can do everything. It can't. The much like the sons say, the change has to begin from within. But you can in a sense create the outside. You can landscape it, you can prune it, you can guard it, you can guardrail him. Everything can happen. But if she decides to wear a floral on a day when there's a funeral, she's got to pay the price for it. So you cannot control everything. And whether it is ego or whether it's, most often it is lack of information. It is not ego. It is overconfidence in themselves. It is not confidence. It is overconfidence. It is not a insistence on being stupid. It's usually a paucity of data. So very often I think agencies want to take refuge saying, oh, I did my best. It's not your best if you haven't given the evidence, if you haven't provided the examples, if you haven't given options, and if you haven't been tough. Everybody can't be tough. Okay, you can only be tough with the advantage of gray hair and experience. And I think that is why people, when they look for advice, need to spend more time finding the appropriate person to advise them rather than cherry pick the advice they get.
But that's an interesting thing that you're saying in a time when almost everybody is a consultant or a strategic consultant, or the word consultant is used so loosely now. Then anybody can say that most people are out there selling strategy and being a consultant. I sometimes wish that is a job I could take. I'm a consultant.
In my own company, I used to have a rule that unless you've been either in the company or in the industry for 12 plus years, you can't write strategy on any document you write. You write plan, you write approach, you cannot use the word strategy.
Yeah.
Strategy.
Thank you for saying that.
12 years is the minimum cutoff point. Okay. With AI, it may be 11 years, 6 months, but that's it. It does not change.
What's your take on the way PR has been dumbed down today? Like now with, everyone is an influencer. Are we, kind of living in an age of influence without any stature or, substance? Anybody is an influencer now, just the number of followers that you have. And you're supposedly doing the best PR for yourself.
This is a world where Daljit Dosanjh in a turban gets as much attention as a Shah Rukh Khan with attempting to look like Bappi Lahiri. Okay. Now, images need to be very carefully crafted. Images need to be consistent. When you want to break out of that image, it's got to be a very careful decision. There, I think Shah Rukh knows what he's doing. Very few people do.
Now since you brought that up, I want to ask you, where do you think Shah Rukh went wrong at the Met Gala and Diljit got it completely right?
I think in the choice of designer. The Met Gala is a global event. Sabyasachi, fond as I am of him and champion as I am of Indian made stuff, does not have that global presence. I think he was riding on using Shah Rukh, and Daljit was using a global designer who was able to pull him up to the Met Gala. So in this case, the beneficiary is Sabyasachi, that Shah Rukh chose to wear him, and Daljit benefited from Gurung's.
True. Yeah.
So that is the switch.
You mentioned the Dilli Ka Babu column, which I wasn't aware that you were writing for so long. And I really liked, I read a lot of your pieces, and I really like this, tongue-in-cheek approach that you have while writing. It was that deliberate to take, because you're writing about an institution which is so formal. You think the bureaucracy remains a very misunderstood institution?
When I wrote the IAS exam and I made it to the COPS, I think, and to the Central Civil Services, because I got bored writing the 6th and 7th paper. You had an option in those days of writing 5 papers if you wanted to opt only for the civil service and not for the IAS, IFS. I found the whole process foolish. But I think the bureaucracy 10 years ago had a different view of itself. Today it's a mangled and a strangled version of itself. But right through the 35 plus years that I've run, more that I've run this column, I've always taken the view that the bureaucrat is only a very smart exam writer put in a role which is far more important than she or he realizes it is. And then they want to justify to themselves, much as a district collector wants to ride on a horse to show that he's the ruler of the district. Roles have changed, times have changed, people's expectations have changed, and most importantly, the information landscape has changed. People know what's going on in the next district and what's going on in 50 districts away. So you cannot get away with the lack of information. Today people compare.
So do they understand that, or do they understand about facts? They're just focused on files, and now you see a lot more of them dressing much better, tweeting a lot. But beyond the files, do they understand that the world is changing, or India is changing now?
I think that what has happened in the recent years is the level of talent, especially at the top decision-making levels, has come down. So dumbing down is a bigger issue to do with bureaucratic decision-making than to do with, say, the PR industry or, say, any other industry. Okay? Dumbing down is because you have the best people no longer aspiring to be that. That dip in quality happened post-Mandal. The service itself no longer had the attraction it used to have. You no longer get a solar topi and a horse. So suddenly, if the best people who used to enter the IITs are now no longer wanting to write these exams, which they used to just 20 years ago. Now suddenly, when the quality of input begins to fail, the quality of the top begins to sag. So when the bottom falls out, the top begins to cave in.
True that. We were talking about how you've helped shape the image of the Indian corporate world. If you had to do it for the Indian government today, what narrative would you build?
Good question and a tough question. I would say that the world no longer recognizes certain things which we think are crucial to our image. The world should focus more on the fact that not that India is a country of large numbers of consumers, but it's a country of young consumers. We need to project the fact that we are making whatever effort we can, plus in terms of image creation, to educate them, to give them exposure, and to give them tools. And that the rest is in their hands. And I think the world recognizes that you cannot nanny every single citizen of yours. We still confuse ourselves with being the nanny state. You cannot be that. You can only be powerful if you're a non-nanny state,
Mm.
if you're a state which takes efforts to enhance quality but does not attempt to choke dissent. So all these things are very important. If I were to recast the government, I would say keep Atmanirbharta to just a few select industries. Make sure that you show how talented some of your young people are. A version of India's Got Talent, but for a whole bunch of different other businesses. And I think that is where we will strike a new image. The moment you take this core thesis, then you can expand it into a whole bunch of messages.
And how India's hyper nationalism, and how does that affect our image globally?
Most people don't understand the difference between patriotism and nationalism. And I think patriotism is a good thing. Nationalism does not ring that positively. So I think we need to make sure that we don't fall into that trap. It's a downward spiral.
True. So you've seen Delhi's politics from inside. You worked with Sheila ji, and then later with the newer political experiments like AAP. Who, in your view, is best suited to lead a city like Delhi? Not just administratively, but I think Delhi needs also an emotional connect.
This is dangerous ground, but I think Delhi needs a Sardar. Big in heart, a little bit of a show off, loud, willing to accept that he's wrong, and yet aggressive enough to be brash and bold with the world.
Okay.
I'm not talking of a category of person.
Yeah,
I'm talking of the quintessential Sardar type.
Yeah, understood. So tell me, you think Sheila ji got enough credit for her vision? She was before the time of social media, but and she was good with the press. Do you think that, Delhi has forgotten her, or was she too ahead of her time?
I think any citizen 35 plus talks with both utmost respect and a level of veneration which leaders would die to have. And I don't think that you'll see a leader like her lead this city for a very long time.
Yeah. And where do you think the AAP experiment, Aam Aadmi Party, went wrong?
I think it went wrong when it started to build a temple to itself in the Chief Minister's house. That, to me, was the moral quicksand on which it sank. I think it is far bigger than even the liquor scam. And the second thing that it had was that it began to believe that only people who had led the revolution should be part of the government. They needed to bring in talent very quickly from the outside and make them part of the process and not outsiders to the process.
True, agree. And okay, we're talking about Delhi and the podcast is about Delhi. So you spent your life navigating Delhi's many layers, cultural, sarkari, Lutyens. How would you describe Delhi?
Delhi is a bit like the courtesan in the book Siddharth by Hermann Hesse. When Siddharth wants to go in to spend the night with her, she asks him, "Why should I let you come in with me when princes are waiting in line for my pleasure?" So he says, "I can teach you three things. I can teach you to fast, I can teach you to wait, I can teach you to think. If you can't fast, you can't wait, and if you can't wait, you can't think." I think that, to my mind, is the kind of education process that any leader of Delhi needs to go through. I think if someone wants to be a person running Delhi, they need to prove they can fast for 72 hours with not even water, or maybe a few sips of water. Okay? Because if you don't have the patience and you want to pretend that you will deliver in the first month and throw up a report card in 100 days, then you're stupid. Because Delhi has serious problems and Delhi has huge opportunities. It is the opportunity which we are missing. I get worried that the leaders of Delhi don't realize the the treasure trove they're sitting on. It's the most wealthiest city in the world in terms of resources, in terms of central money, in terms of uh, everything. It's being squandered by people who don't realize that the leakage is happening at the bottom, and they're sitting, supremely unaware at the top of this treasure chest.
Which we are wasting,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Okay, tell me, Delhi's power structures from the press club to the prime minister's office, they're often invisible to outsiders. What's the one myth that you'd like to bust about how Delhi really functions?
Delhi, to my mind,
Mm.
truly functions out of Khan Market still. Okay? Much as people will want to diss it, the fact is that everything revolves around it. Okay? Within 2 kilometers around that, everything happens. Okay? Decisions are taken, people drive through and take calls. Okay? Why does every visiting head of state want to go there? The fact is that it may be a mixture of vastu, values, and vacuousness. But in many senses, it represents what Delhi is. You got to understand that first. Anyone who cannot navigate that and doesn't have the insouciance to drive up to the front gate and leave your car in front of Bari and fling your key at the guy there, you don't know Delhi. And I think that hasn't changed. From the time when I came to Delhi, when it was actually a market where the wives of bureaucrats used to go to buy their subsidies, it has now become the epicenter of a new world order. Meaning, if I'm looking for a simple thing like a whoop, that's where you go to get it. You get everything there. Okay? The only other place that matters, and people don't realize that there is an axis which connects these two, is Bhogal. And between Bhogal and Khan Market, if you don't know how to navigate this, that is one end of the spectrum where you can buy an elephant and a kaddu, whereas you can buy a whoop and a gelato here. You've got to understand that this is the world. This is what Delhi is about. Everything else is a myth. It's a maya.
Really well said. That's my Delhi, also from Bogle to Khan Market. Okay, this Delhi is a city where almost everybody knows everybody, and you've managed decades of friendship and clients over here, often on opposing sides. How do you, draw the line between Dilip the friend and Dilip the professional? Everybody knows Dilip Cherian in Delhi.
It's an old Sicilian value called omerta. Nothing that comes to me goes out to anybody else. It comes to me, it sinks in the black hole. I regurgitate it as an experience to enhance somebody else's possible experience, but nothing is shared. You have to learn how to swallow.
Tell me, what keeps you excited about the work after decades? Is it the unpredictability, or it's the people, or the challenges? I mean, you mentioned
as I told
that
you, every time it gets comfortable, I learn to stir the pot, and I've learned that at a huge cost of continuity, but maintaining excitement, and that at the end of the day is the party always has to be in your head, not determined by what's going around you. The party has to be in your head. If it's not in your head, you're not listening to the music.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, give me 3 favorite spots in Delhi for you.
Very easy. Lodi Gardens, Humayun's Tomb, Khan Market.
Okay. 3 words to describe Delhi today.
Complex, crowded, and changing.
And your Delhi guilty pleasure?
An entire plate of mutton stew with one full Khamiri roti to myself.
From where?
At Kareem's.
Okay. Okay, one public figure, who's a dream PR client for you? Who would be, can be, could be, or has been?
I would say that the client I would love to deal with is probably uh, not born yet, but would be a third generation inheritor who wants to break out of the family business, start something completely new, and is willing to invest in a globally dominating idea and um, has the ability to see that it requires image making also.
Okay. Is there anyone in public life today whose image you admire, who you think is playing the PR game long term well?
Mm, yes, I would say that probably the one who's managing his image uh, rather well so far is Yogi Adityanath. From a fakir to a hyper ambitious chief minister, he's traveled very well.
Mm. Okay. And do you see him traveling further?
He needs help.
Okay, so he knows who to call. Okay, last question. How do you handle your own image?
I
How
don't.
does
The
Dilip
trick,
Cherian brand himself?
the trick to being a brand conductor, image guru, litigation landscaper, crisis counselor is allow, you know, I remember many years ago, I was helping Tendulkar with launching his restaurant. And I tried to give him stuff and tell him this is what you should say, this is what you should say. And he told me, my bat does the talking. So I realized that let your work speak for itself. Don't try and wreck something which is going well.
Which is working.
If you're able to do your work well,
Mm.
it will say everything. As long as you don't expect to, in my case, accelerate the process for any immediate end. And I don't need to. That's the blessing that I have.
Yeah. Okay. Is there a book I have to ask? Is there a book which is
Yes, there is a
there
book.
would be a Delhi.
There is a book on the bureaucracy.
Huh.
It has been in the works for 10 years.
Mm.
I have to complete it sometime.
What about a book on your life and work?
Never. Those secrets will never be told.
Yeah, that the black hole is taking them all.
Yes.
But thank you, Dilip.
Thank
you for the wonderful session. And we hope we can get you back once again because there is so much more left to talk.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for the questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dilip. In a world where spin is cheap and strategy is often performative, Dilip Cherian reminds us that true influence is built, not bought. Reputation in his hands isn't about masking flaws. It's about understanding perception, harnessing the truth, and shaping legacy with intent. As Delhi evolves into a hybrid of old networks and new narratives, it's voices like his, seasoned, sharp, and still asking the right questions that help decode what's really going on beneath the headlines. Thank you, Dilip, for reminding us that in the business of influence, credibility is still the most powerful currency.